Story 1. My niece's father. I will keep this brief. He stole my video games and Dreamcast when we let him stay at our house. He is extremely disrespectful to my family. He bailed before my niece was born. He tried to break into my house to take my niece. He showed up unannounced with his mother for my niece's first birthday. My dad was furious and confronted him. He hid behind his mother's SUV while she spoke to my dad. 14 years later, he re-entered her life randomly via Facebook. They went out for dinner with my sister, and he promised to be present. Later that week, he sent a text expressing his regrets about not being able to be there for her. He canceled their dinner plans. I never heard from him again. This devastated my niece, who has faced challenges because of him. He is a terrible person. If I ever see him again, I will confront him. Story 2. My ex, who abandoned my son, had her parental rights formally terminated, cutting the last remaining ties I had to her. However, my son was just a baby and did not deserve to feel abandoned. I am grateful that my wife adopted him and has been the mother he deserves, but I can never forgive my ex for being so callous towards him. Story 3. My former boss created a toxic workplace, and when I tried to discuss it with him, he ignored me for 4 months, making my job impossible. When he let me go, he wouldn't look me in the eye and gave me vague reasons. I hope that company suffers due to his arrogance. Story 4. The friend who violated my trust while I was asleep was my best friend. It was shocking to wake up to that experience and then cope with the aftermath. I am no longer actively angry about it, but I don't feel that I have truly forgiven him either. Frankly, he has never asked for my forgiveness. To his credit, I told him to stay away from me and to leave me alone, and he respected my wishes after that. Perhaps if I understood why it happened, I would be more willing to forgive, but it will never make sense to me. Story 5. My birth giver. The day I told her that her boyfriend assaulted me, and she responded by saying that if I loved her, I would do whatever it takes to keep him happy so he would stay with her, is the day I decided she is no longer my mother. Absolutely unforgivable. Story 6. Anyone who has bullied me, whether in the past or present, is noteworthy. It is astonishing how many adults attempt to intimidate others. If someone engages in bullying behavior, I genuinely hope they experience the consequences of their actions. Story 7. I thought this guy was a good friend in high school, but he started ignoring me for no reason, and I never found out why. He acted as if I didn't exist for over a year. Story 8. I had anger issues as a child and teenager. I hurt many people and often locked myself in the bathroom to cry because I hated myself for my actions. I chipped my mom's tooth, and she suffers from back pain because of it. At one point, I tried to push my dad down a flight of stairs. I have improved since then, and my parents have been incredibly supportive. Story 9. My oldest sister has done so much for me, but the last straw was taking my mom and me to court for something we didn't do. Story 10. Rapists and child molesters. I don't care if you turned your life around. Most things I can forgive besides that. The problem is, most people won't admit they did anything wrong. They only make excuses for why you should forgive them. Story 11. Andrew Wakefield. It is unknown how many hundreds of children have died because their misguided parents believed his falsehoods about vaccines for his financial gain. Story 12. The pet resort owner allowed my dog to escape through a faulty fence. The rural resort had great reviews and seemed like the perfect place to keep my dog for 4 days. I was out of state when it happened. She delayed contacting me for over 24 hours and was unhelpful in trying to find him. I ended up making hundreds of flyers and offering a reward that I couldn't afford to encourage people to look for him. She didn't want the fact that she lost a dog to affect her business and went out of her way to take down missing posters near her location. I never saw anyone from the resort searching for him, and many properties in the area are gated and not welcoming to uninvited visitors. I needed her help but did not receive it, and it ruined my life, not to mention my dog's. He was found after 18 days at the bottom of a dry tank by a rancher, covered in ants, with head trauma, dehydration, and emaciation. I became extremely distressed while he was missing and continued to spiral as he remained in the hospital. He is completely blind now. He lost an eye, a few teeth, and part of a toe. I quit a great job to search for him and nurse him back to health. In my state, I was only allowed to sue for the price of the dog, not for damages or anything like that, so my situation worsened after that. I will forever hold that woman accountable and will never be able to forgive her inaction. This happened in 2016, and I am still appalled by the whole experience, but my blind dog is still here and is treated like a tiny king. Story 13. My ex's parents made his childhood difficult, and he never fully recovered. He ultimately died from a heroin overdose, and they are directly responsible. Story 14. My ex and the girl he cheated on me with knew about me and lied to my face. He hid the cheating and continued to lie to me afterward. Story 15. My ex-wife kidnapped my children and brainwashed them into thinking I would abuse them and allow them to be abused, or that I would kill them. 10 years later, we are still dealing with the trauma. The children haven't heard from her in 7.5 years. I will never forgive her or her soon-to-be ex-husband. Much of what she accused me of doing, she actually did. Even the court believed she would harm them if she had unsupervised access to them again. Story 16. My coworker used information that I provided and my poor memory to potentially cause me serious harm. Why? Because I was talking to her ex-boyfriend in a friendly manner from 15 years ago. She has been married for 10 years. Story 17. I knew one of the police officers who informed me of my spouse's death from when we were younger. They laughed at me when I began to ask what happened through my sobbing. I found out later that they even volunteered to be there to deliver the news. Story 18. Mom's ex-boyfriend was mean and abusive, a heavy drinker who thought he knew everything. He hit me once, and I told Mom that if he ever hit me again, I would kill him. She knew I meant it. Story 19. A family I know used the fact that I was abandoned as a teenager to manipulate me into doing free work for them, then abandoned me when they grew tired of me a week before Christmas. Story 20. My mother. I will try to make a very long and difficult story as short as possible. I grew up as the overweight kid. No matter what I did, I couldn't keep the weight off. My mom sent me to a Catholic school where my peers were physically, emotionally, and even sexually abusive to me. The staff at the school did next to nothing, and if I tried to defend myself, I would be the one receiving punishment for it. Some of the clergy at the church decided to take me under their wing, which ultimately led to my being molested. Life in elementary school was a living hell for me, and I begged to be taken out of that school and sent to public school like my brother and sister. Now, I was basically left to fend for myself as best as I could. Years later, in an effort to help my mother understand what I've been working through in therapy, I explained to her what happened to me, how awful it was, and how upset I was that my siblings were taken out of that school while I was left behind. Not only did she not believe most of what I said, because accepting that she had anything to do with why I struggled in my teens, 20s, and 30s would mean admitting she wasn't the best mom ever, and that will never happen. But she also finally told me why she refused to take me out of there. Apparently, she made a promise to some strangers at Catholic Charities, the organization through which she adopted me, that I would receive a good Catholic education. Okay, I need to go express my anger for a while. Every time I recount this, it makes me so angry that I don't know what to do with myself. I apologize for the lengthy message. I tried to keep it as brief as I could. I just really don't want to be alive anymore. Story 21. My old supervisor, Ray. I hope your key breaks off in your car door and that you hit every red light for the rest of your life. Story 22. One of my best friends throughout high school, college, and into my adult life got engaged and supported his fiancée in being petty. She purposely planned her bachelorette party on the same day as my wedding because she had an argument with another friend and didn't want him around. Not only did my best friend not show up at my wedding, but several of my female friends missed the ceremony to keep the peace and make an appearance at both events. He was like a brother to me for over 10 years and chose a girl he regularly complained about. I haven't seen or spoken to him since, and I'm not sure I want to. Story 23. I could forgive her for the physical, mental, and emotional damage she did to me, but I can never forgive her for the damage she inflicted on my sisters. Her preferential treatment of my brothers did no favors for them in adulthood either. My biological father ignored me for 11 years while driving through my area to visit my older brother, go on vacation, or see his third wife's family several times a year. He came to apologize 2 days before my dad, who raised me and invited me to spend time with him and my two younger siblings, was declared brain dead. My biological father then demanded communication because he had apologized, and when I told him I didn't feel like talking because my dad just died, his response was, "He was not your dad. I'm your dad. Never forget. Never forgive. Never communicate again. I will not attend their funerals, and I will not shed a tear when I hear through the grapevine that they're dead." Story 24. Hugo Chavez, Nicolas Maduro, Diosdado Cabello, Lucas Tascon, and others. As a Venezuelan living abroad, you may understand the reasons behind this. Story 25. My best friend of 15 years stole my multiple sclerosis medication for her fiancé while I was helping to plan her wedding as her maid of honor. Story 26. My family members have sabotaged me in many ways. I don't feel safe with them in my life. They do not have my best interests at heart. Story 27. 40 years ago, I worked for my uncle, who owned a small trucking company. When I informed him that my wife was pregnant and I needed medical benefits, which he did not offer, he claimed he couldn't afford it. Meanwhile, he was sending his son, my cousin, to private school, recently bought his wife a brand new car, and was taking 2 overseas vacations each year while I managed his company in his absence. With the help of my father-in-law, I found another job that provided medical benefits. However, at future family gatherings, I was perceived as the bad guy for leaving his company. Nobody can hurt you like family. Story 28. My mother became very angry with my wife because we, as young parents, wanted to raise our baby our way, not according to my mother's wishes. She told my wife that she was insane and had a messed up mind. This year marks the 4th year that we have not spoken to her. At this point, we are better off without her, and I do not want any relationship with her. Story 29. My mother was physically and verbally abusive to me from the time I was a baby. I will also never forgive my father for standing by and allowing it to happen. He could have done something, but he chose not to, his words. It took me years of therapy to undo the damage she caused. I do not forgive or forget. Story 30. As a parent, I tried because I believed I should, but this parent created chaos, turned me and my siblings against each other, and caused financial issues. I am 68 years old and have had no communication with this person, yet they continue to influence my siblings in an attempt to cause division among us. Story 31. My biological father was a dishonest individual who only did nice things for his own benefit. I am relieved he died in a work accident. Story 32. I would never forgive sociopaths and individuals with personality disorders who poisoned my life and tried to convince me that I was inferior. Some wounds they inflicted will never heal. They broke me and left me living half dead. Let them burn in their own hell, far away from me and those I care about. Story 33. My late partner's mother, brother, and her abusers from childhood contributed to her tragic death. She ended her life, but it was their actions that truly caused her pain. I hope they are suffering. Story 34. My parents and some bullies made me feel alienated and emotionally abused since the age of 7. I was also physically abused from 1st grade to 5th grade. Story 35. Nobody. I will forgive anyone and everyone who shows genuine remorse. However, forgiveness should not grant impunity to consequences. Story 36. I loved my dad, but he struggled with alcoholism and passed away while under the influence. I will spare you the details, but I cannot forgive his weakness for alcohol. Story 37. My ex-wife cheated on me. My friend robbed my house. All the people who bullied me in school and at work. Story 38. Hardee's bought and eliminated Burger Chef. I will not give Hardee's a single penny of my money. Story 39. I am not sure about never, but my parents were very abusive to me while I was growing up. I know a lot of it was due to their own difficult upbringing and poor guidance from the group we were involved with. They have apologized to me, and I have accepted their help in the past. However, I cannot shake the feeling that if I were still helpless, they would still be hurting me. Story 40. My ex-partner led me to believe that we were repairing our relationship for years, only to later admit that she had no intention of staying together and was frightened of losing the financial security of being with me. During that time, her treatment toward me drove me to alcoholism, self-harm, and ultimately a suicide attempt. Following that, she chose to lie to the police to obtain a temporary protective order, resulting in my eviction from our apartment, job loss as we worked in the same building, and preventing me from seeing our son for a year. I wish her nothing but the worst. Story 41. My ex said she would love me more if I proposed to her. When I bought the ring and asked, she said she would love me forever, but didn't see herself in a relationship with me anymore. Now she's with a gambler and a drug addict. I don't hate her. I despise her. Story 42. My mother. I have heart failure and a mechanical aortic heart valve. I have had a stroke and several mini heart attacks. My mother had the opportunity to have my heart fixed when I was 14. I would likely have had a normal life if she had made that decision. However, she chose to ignore the letters and correspondence with my cardiologist because it interfered with one of her horse shows. Her horses always took priority. Story 43. My old elementary school teacher still comes to mind. I remember her name and where she lives, although I haven't checked on her in a couple of years. The resentment I feel towards her is strong enough that I periodically look her up. She claimed I was intellectually disabled, but after testing, the opposite was proven true. They then pressured me to provide answers that could be used to weaponize the Department of Children and Families against my family, forcing us to flee the state. That school had a history of targeting mixed-race children, especially since it was located in a rural, conservative area. If they had succeeded, my education would have been irreparably damaged, and I would have ended up in foster care with numerous complications. I have a particular disdain for her and the school administrators, especially because they target vulnerable children. Story 44. I will never forgive the friend I had last year. My ex, whom I was seeing at the time, died, and it seemed like the friend was there for me. They used my vulnerability to push boundaries and behave inappropriately. I was lonely and missing my ex, so I tolerated their bad behavior. I hope they face consequences for their actions. There is a special place for those who prey on people's vulnerabilities and exploit them for personal gain. Story 45. My male and female adopters chose to adopt children through foster care. Instead of giving us a better chance at life, they abused us mentally, emotionally, and physically. They made me hypersexually aware at too young an age, calling me inappropriate names in first grade and making comments about my brother and me engaging in sexual behavior when I was 6. They took the money from the state of California for adopting through foster care and used it for nice houses and alcohol. They drank excessively and still do. They adopted 5 children and only one talks regularly with them. My disabled biological brother, whom they have been medicating since the 1990s. They take his Social Security money, leaving him with no access to his disability funds. He has been influenced by the male adopter for so long that he has become a racist, homophobic person just like them. I loathe them. Every day I wait for a call that one of them is gone. I hope the female adopter goes first, leaving the male adopter alone. I have forgiven myself for holding on to the hope that they would act like a mother and father to me. So now I just wait for them to die so I can finally be free. They stalk my social media and try to instigate. I have bitten the bait a few times, and then they claim I'm crazy. Life with narcissists. Story 46. My grandfather was diagnosed with cancer, but before we found out, my aunt was closer to him than my mother and my cousins. After he received the diagnosis, my mother insisted that he stay with us. We did our best to support him at that time, but my aunt and cousins were absent. Unfortunately, he passed away, and they took everything from his property even though they did not help with his treatment. We still communicate, but I feel a lot of anger. Story 47. My brother molested my sister, had a relationship with my ex-girlfriend, tried to break us up while we were together, injured me severely twice, and broke my nose due to his anger issues. Story 48. The guy who tricked a group of 13 to 15-year-olds, including me, in an online game into believing he was dying and eventually died from some rare disease. We were all really close, talking to each other and virtually hanging out pretty much the entire time we were out of school. He was around 20 at the time and even involved his girlfriend to give us sad updates when he was in the hospital. This dragged on for months before he supposedly died. We all thought he really died until about 20 years later when someone found him still alive and well on social media. I suppose it's not the biggest deal and we all moved on, but his excuse when confronted, that he was bored and thought it would be funny to see our reactions, made me think, no, forget that guy. Story 49. My ex-girlfriend did terrible things to me, things I have shared with almost no one except my mom and my best friend. I will never tell anyone else. It goes beyond shame, and I can never forgive her. Story 50. My mother. She managed to be around all the time, at least physically, but it has always been about her finding ways to live the lazy life she wants to live. As far as my sister and I are concerned, she doesn't realize she has been a grandmother to 3 kids for nearly 5 years, even though I considered giving her another chance to be there for the next generation. I met her again at a family gathering. I saw her look at my cousin's child, of whom I am the godfather, with disdain. You know the look, while assuming it might be my child and telling me stories about how she would love to be a grandmother. Not with my kids. You have already caused enough damage with me and my sister. There is no need to let another generation suffer because of you. Story 51. John Amos Fick, Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy. He should have been a leader but took advantage of me when I was vulnerable. I hope he experiences the difficult days he deserves. Story 52. My ex and I were in each other's lives for 15 years and together for almost 7. She briefly dated someone else and ended up pregnant with our daughter a year or so before we got together. I was in my daughter's life from 15 months until she was 8.5 before I was asked to walk away quietly from the life we had created. I had paid for everything for years and never saw a dime from her tax returns with the child credit, but she always got her hair done when she received them each year. She said she wanted the apartment and the cats. The nerve of her. But she knew I wouldn't uproot my daughter from her school or take pets away from a child. So I lost out horribly. That was 2.5 years ago, and I'm just now starting to feel like a person again. However, I now have post-traumatic stress disorder and an anxiety disorder because of it. She really hurt me, and I don't think I'll ever be the same. I know I will never be fooled like that again. Story 53. My dad a few years ago was so drunk that I ended up cornering my mother in the bathroom before the night was over. I remember his bloodshot eyes telling me if I wanted to step in and do something I had the perfect opportunity. I kept replaying in my head that he would leave in a body bag, or I would, but no one was touching my mom. Eventually, he walked away and passed out on the bed. The next morning, he sat and stared at the television, smoking a cigar. He saw me and said a cold, "Sorry, had too much last night," without even looking me in the face. I lost my respect and developed post-traumatic stress disorder from that night. I can't hear screaming, alarm clocks, or be woken up, or even think about taking a sip of alcohol without shaking and hyperventilating. I struggled with alcohol afterward. I'm 3 months sober now, and my post-traumatic stress disorder has gotten progressively better, but I lost respect for my dad that day. I love him. He's never done anything like this before, but I can't look at him and forgive that. Story 54. Probably my mother. I thought I could forgive her for not believing me about what my stepfather did to me. It wasn't just disbelief. It was making me continue to live with him, completely putting a wall between us. She made me talk to her and him in the guidance counselor's office about it, then sent me back to class in tears, rolling her eyes when I told her that, at 13, I called the police because no one would help me. My baby niece was born almost exactly a year ago, and I have never loved someone like I love her, and she's not even my child. I can't fathom her coming to me, telling me someone made her watch inappropriate content and tried to touch her, and me not believing her. Story 55. My biological mother left my brother and me when we were about 2 and 3 years old. She later had our sister with the man she had been involved with, the same man who had been abusing my brother and me until she abandoned us. She told my grandfather that she would harm us if she had to keep us. Now, she is married for the fourth time and raising three children who aren't hers. After failing to support her own three kids, she pretends to be a mother when she has already failed. The reason I can never forgive her is that, to this day, she believes she is more of a victim than we are. She asks me if I have trauma from her, sounding proud to have caused it. Each time she re-enters my life, she finds a way to do something hurtful and traumatize me further. I have learned, after several unsuccessful attempts, that making space for her in my life is no longer worthwhile. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, but it has only resulted in pain each time. Today is her birthday as well. This may be the first year I do not message her. Story 56. My grandfather's second wife, who has passed away, took my inheritance as well as that of my siblings and cousins. Unfortunately, she is buried in the same cemetery as my real grandparents. Whenever I visit them, I stop by her grave. Story 57. My neighbor's grandsons borrowed my PlayStation when we were kids and told me I wouldn't get it back. Story 58. I was just talking about this during tonight's Arsenal game. Robert Pires, the footballer. Years ago, in one game, he was running into the box, easily going past a defender. He stuck his leg out to the side for no reason other than to make contact with the defender and go down for a penalty. I want to stress that he had beaten his man. Any normal footballer would see this as a chance to go ahead and score. But not Pires. Like he was playing a game, he put his right leg out to the side unnaturally and went for the penalty. And he got it. I have seen players cheat and fake fouls, but the defender didn't put a leg out or attempt to tackle. He just stood there. That was unacceptable behavior. I don't care how good a player he is. If he's on television, I turn it over. If I get his card in a video game, I sell it immediately. He is dead to me. Story 59. There is a girl who said I harassed her just so our mutual friends would not invite me to the bar they were going to. It is frustrating. Luckily, I can be trusted, and the story ended with me still being best friends with them years later, long after school. As for what she is doing now, I have no idea. Story 60. I could mention my best friend of over 20 years for ignoring me every time I've reached out, especially during my most difficult times. I could also refer to the people who have taken advantage of my kindness without returning it. Additionally, I could talk about my family, who have consistently relied on me for support, but have only pushed me further down when I needed help. However, the truth is that the common factor in all my struggles is myself. Story 61. My stepmother has shown disrespect towards me and my brother since she married our father, and she is attempting to frame him for domestic violence. I may have negative feelings towards my father, but he deserves better. Story 62. The ex who claimed to love me but sexually assaulted me and falsely said they had cancer. Story 63. My older brother and his ex-wife. Before their split in the late 1970s, he came to me and said his wife wanted to buy my 1972 Mustang Fastback. I gave him a great deal. They would pay $125 per month for 2 years. At Christmas, I told them to skip the payment and buy presents for their 4 kids. I only received a few payments before they split up. My brother offered to replace a U-joint on my 1974 Cuda if I let him use it for a month, which was fine since I had a 1973 Mustang convertible. Both he and his ex disappeared, and I never saw either car again. His ex showed up at my house a few years later wanting the title. When I said she had never finished paying, she said, "But the transmission went out." I told her I would think about it, closed the door, and never did anything about it after that. Losing 2 cars was worth not having either person in my life again. It's too bad about losing 2 collectible cars, though. The Fastback was actually a T5. It had no Mustang lettering at all, just the Running Horse logo and T5 badging. It was meant for export to Germany, where Ford couldn't use the Mustang name because a German tractor company had the rights. Story 64. The president of the company I used to work for ended my contracts after I set up a cleaning business to handle my workload and provide insurance. Initially, I was receiving extra income from cleaning after hours for the same company, but when their new president decided that all locations should be managed by one cleaning company, I lost my contracts. The way it was handled was unacceptable. When I inquired about their decision and explained my difficult situation, their suggestion was for me to invest more in my company and bid on all of the locations, essentially dismissing my concerns and placing me in a precarious position. To consider that option, I would have had to quit my full-time job, which was not feasible for me. In the end, they hired multiple companies to manage their locations, which span several counties and are planning to expand to nearby states. It felt like they lied to justify terminating my contracts and showed no regard for the impact on my life. The arrangement I had was in place before she started, and within 6 months of her arrival, my situation had deteriorated significantly. Eventually, I closed my business, left that job, and now I'm in a much better place. However, I often find myself fantasizing about confronting her about the way I was treated. Story 65. My former close friend married my ex-fiancée. I cried on his shoulder about the breakup, only for him to start dating her a month later. Story 66. This lady in our finance department turns the process of paying a simple invoice into a days-long ordeal. She randomly changes the process, or there are issues with the invoice, leading her to reject it without informing me. As a result, the invoice doesn't get paid, and I am unaware because I don't have access to the software to check. I just need her to communicate if there's an issue, and I promise I will resolve it. As for my sister, we have moved past our feud, but I will never forgive her, and our relationship will never be the same. Story 67. My aunt left my grandmother waiting all day, like a child waiting for a negligent parent to pick him up. She was supposed to take her out shopping and spend the day together. My aunt became busy and forgot. She withdrew as much as she could from my grandmother's account, as she was authorized to access it in emergencies, while my grandmother drew her last breaths. My watch alerted me to the transaction as I held my grandmother's hand. My aunt showed up 10 minutes after she passed away. For 30 years, I looked up to my aunt and uncle. Now they repulse me. Story 68. My abusive stepmother made me believe for decades that I was worthless and deserved to be treated poorly. Story 69. My father, who was not involved in my life, committed horrific acts against my family. When I was 10 years old, he assaulted my 12-year-old sister. He then attacked me, striking me in the head and stabbing me multiple times, leaving me for dead. Story 70. My stepfather got a nurse at the hospital pregnant while my sister was dying of leukemia. He has never had a job in the more than 30 years I have known him and has a history of abusing my mother. She may have forgiven him multiple times for various incidents, but I never will. Story 71. My father wasn't a bad man. He just made some very questionable choices. He ended up taking his own life. I hadn't spoken to him for about a year at that point. I took care of the funeral and the bills he left behind and ensured my younger sister had some money for the future. My memory of him is now tainted. Story 72. My grandfather for abusing my sister from ages 4 to 16. My grandmother for covering for him. My cousin's mother for blaming my sister, asking why she did not stop it sooner. The prison system for allowing my grandfather to send a letter to my sister that led to a suicide attempt. Myself for not telling anyone when my sister confided in me about it when I was 8. She is 3 years older than me, so I could have saved her 5 years of suffering. My parents for not believing my sister when she told them at age 4, instead accepting my grandfather's excuses. I still love my parents, but as a father myself, I struggle to forgive that part, despite my logical understanding. Story 73. My sister asked me to co-sign a loan for her daughter to go to school in 2004. The loan is still outstanding. I discovered this when I started looking to sell my house and realized that the loan has gone years without payment, with some years having only paid less than $200 for the entire year. Story 74. My ex-wife's parents gaslit and neglected her for years, ignoring her. When she tried to tell them she was being molested by her brothers, they dismissed her claims, saying she was just looking for attention. Her brothers were also responsible, but her parents never looked out for her. Story 75. My father abandoned our family when I was in the 5th grade and then died 2 years later after no contact. Story 76. My friends from middle school did their best to destroy my self-esteem and made it nearly impossible to rebuild. They were not just careless. They knew exactly what they were doing. Story 77. My teacher in high school disliked me without reason. When I was diagnosed with diabetes, she approached me and said, "It happened because of me," indicating her awareness of her actions. I also remember the classmates and family members who bullied me, as well as those who have hurt my sister. Story 78. My stepfather abused me for 15 years, took every dollar I earned in high school, and tried to ruin my life. He convinced me he was a god. He died of cancer before I gained the life experience and wisdom to see him for what he truly was. He was a monster, and I hope the cancer took him slowly. He deserved worse. Story 79. My grandfather, who had a narcissistic personality, accused me of forging bank records when I showed him that he had not lent me money. He lent it to a different family member, my cousin. He then screamed at my wife and lunged to either push or strike her before I got in between them. I stopped all contact with him for the next 7 years until he passed away. Good riddance. Story 80. My cousins have an abusive ex-stepmother who hurt them to the point where one of them became suicidal. My cousins are like siblings to me, and I could never forgive this woman for what she did to them. Story 81. My best friend's girlfriend let him overdose. She told the emergency medical technicians that he didn't use any drugs. He took a laced Percocet and that was it. He also kept naloxone everywhere because he was the type of guy who would help anyone. He just liked to have a good time every once in a while. Story 82. A bully bullied me in school from 9th to 11th grade. It was horrible. Now in my 50s, I still dislike her insensitive behavior. Story 83. My mother came to my hospital room after I gave birth to tell me that my baby, who was in the neonatal intensive care unit, was going to die and that it would be my punishment from God for marrying someone of another race. Story 84. We don't necessarily forgive others for their sake, but for our own. Peace and love to all sentient beings. Story 85. This guy Joe used to be a friend of mine. I was suspicious he was involved with my girlfriend at the time, and we ended up breaking up because of her cheating on me. One day before we broke up, she asked me if I could drive her friend home. He lived 3 miles away and it was raining, which was no big deal. We talked for the 8-minute drive. He seemed like a cool guy. After we broke up, I received a message from him on Facebook. He told me that my ex had mentioned cheating on me with Joe and he felt I deserved to know since I had been good to him. Joe had confronted me in the grocery store at one point. He told me he didn't know what I had been told and why I stopped talking to him, but he wanted to make amends. I told him I was fine and walked away. Story 86. Childhood best friend who slept with my girlfriend when I went to college. She is cut off forever, but losing my best friend hurt me deeply. 20 years later, it still hurts. Story 87. A girl from my school used to bully me a lot when I was little, but later our sections changed. I suppressed my childhood trauma, only to have it unleashed later by the same girl when we were placed in the same section again. She bullied me with a smile on her face and tried her best to ruin my life. Unfortunately, she was successful. I lost everything I had, and now I am feeling suicidal. Story 88. My older brothers and half-brothers are torturing my elderly mother and trying to take her home away from her all because one of them got caught drinking and driving. It's a long story, but let me know if you want the details. We now have 3 lawyers involved, so it's pretty intense. Story 89. Tori. I don't know her last name. If she weren't already deceased, I would act against her. I am not good with violence. She attempted suicide 5 times while on the phone with my child, who was 14 at the time. During the final attempt, they witnessed her dying in the bathtub. They knew she was in Florida, but that was all the information they had. They have never fully recovered. I hate her, and if hell exists, I hope she is there. Story 90. My mom keeps booking single bedrooms whenever we travel, even though she knows that she snores. Just kidding. Probably my father for cheating and basically throwing us out of the house along with several other things, but I guess that sums it up. Story 91. People at work engage in immature behavior. I swear some individuals maintain a high school mentality for years, far too long. Story 92. My math teacher in middle school bullied me until I transferred whenever I had his classes. I didn't know how to impress him, and he often called me to the board to solve difficult questions, just to look at me defeated and mock me openly. Everyone knew he disliked me. He is the reason I somewhat dislike math to this day. Story 93. My half-sister, who came into my life relatively recently, is marrying someone who has a troubling past and concealed this from my family, which includes young children. She defended him wholeheartedly. Story 94. My twin brother was such a troublemaker and stole over 10,000 pounds from our parents over a period of 2 years. Story 95. My dad and my uncle. I discovered he was having inappropriate discussions with 14-year-old boys online. I told my mom, and we gathered all the proof we could to contact the police. He found out we knew and asked his brother to help him erase everything, which he did. The police said they needed the originals, took his computer and found nothing on it, so he got away with it. Then he used that against my mom and me, telling everyone how horrible we were. He claimed we were liars trying to ruin his life and made up terrible lies about me to turn everyone against us. Here are a few. He said I was always walking around naked in front of him because I was in love with him. He claimed I was stealing money from him. He alleged that I was stealing his painkillers to get high and that he had to suffer because of me. He stated that all the paintings I created were his and that I was just signing them to make people believe they were mine. And more. I haven't seen him in 20 years, and I don't want to. He can die alone for all I care. I won't attend his funeral. Story 96. My father was an insufferable narcissist and very abusive, and on top of that, he assaulted me. Story 97. The first boy who shot at me with a real gun when I was a child. He terrorized me in the projects, and I barely knew him. The second boy pointed a gun at me and threatened to kill me. I have no idea why these two separate boys pulled guns on me. I was very shy back then and kept to myself. Story 98. My stepdad's aunt. I will turn her grave into a public bathroom when she finally passes away. She used to be a foster parent and treated her foster children like personal servants. They had to do all the cleaning around the house and were not allowed to interact when she had guests, but she made them take coats and do the dishes after meals. She was extremely wealthy, as her husband was a successful lawyer, but only provided them with scraps. They ran away frequently. When my stepdad passed, she somehow convinced the pastor to start the funeral service early, even though my mother and I had not arrived yet. We got there a few minutes early, and they were already halfway through. The funeral director was upset and said she had tried to get them to wait. She went through all of our belongings in storage after he passed and discarded many of my childhood items and home movies. She called my mother and told her to come get her belongings or they would all go to the dump. When we arrived, almost everything was gone. She claimed it was all garbage. This was about a week or two after my stepdad died. She also mistreated her own children, played favorites with her grandchildren, and when her favorite granddaughter admitted to being sexually abused, she turned a blind eye. That granddaughter ended up addicted to drugs at 15. Oh, and of course, she was a devout Christian, so she refuses to believe she is anything but a saint. Story 99. My former best friend caused me a lot of financial loss. At first, I didn't mind since she was my friend and I earned significantly more than she did. However, as our incomes became more similar, she continued to take advantage of my kindness. Before I could discuss the financial issues with her, she unfortunately got hurt and required surgery. I intended to support her and have a conversation once she recovered. I even advocated for her to get her surgery rescheduled during the pandemic, but she ultimately chose her abusive boyfriend over our friendship. Story 100. After 5 years of partnership, a father gave his son an ultimatum between me and his family. He tried to turn my life upside down and ultimately lost his only son. Story 101. My aunt. I am frustrated with you for being a narcissist and causing distress to everyone who gets close to you but doesn't meet your odd standards. Your siblings disliked you. All 3 have passed away now, estranged from you when they died in 2006, 2015, and 2023. Both of your children have difficulties in their relationship with you. Your 25-year-old daughter avoids you, and your nearly 40-year-old son has been out of contact for a decade. I have my own issues with you. You filled my mind with falsehoods about my mother, led me to believe you would support me in a time of crisis, and caused significant damage to my life in 2019. I don't even know if you are still alive. If so, I genuinely hope you are unhappy because I am still trying to recover from the most challenging 5 years of my life that you contributed to. I am expressing my feelings today. Story 102. The guy who sexually assaulted me in high school engaged in inappropriate touching, groping, and choking that I did not consent to. Years later, I confronted him, and he denied everything. It gave me nightmares for over a decade, waking up sobbing and shaking, while for him it was just another day. I hold deep resentment toward you, David. Story 103. An uncle molested me from age 6 to 16. I am 60 now, and I am still working on it. It seems that I have made progress, but when I think I have gotten through it, another layer comes up. Story 104. The woman who faced difficulties at work and at home, and who lied about me to distract from her situation, accused me of actions I did not commit, and no one questioned why she suddenly brought it up after 18 months. Then there was the investigator who assaulted me and told me to harm myself during my lowest moments. I lost a career I loved, and my wife and child nearly lost me. I only hope that the universe allows me to witness when karma catches up with them and that the consequences are severe and painful. Story 105. My mom's husband always makes me feel unwanted. It is one of the few issues my mom and I can't agree on. I also don't forgive my father for being absent my entire life. I don't see him much these days, but I can broadly tolerate him for my mom's sake. I love him, but I don't like speaking to him on the phone or seeing him, as that would cause problems. I find my brother and niece to be a great buffer with him. Generally, I am big on forgiveness, but it's hard with them. Story 106. My older cousin's friend was at a family party when I was under 10 years old, and he was around 20. Somehow, we ended up playing catch with a baseball. He threw it wide and it cracked the windshield of someone's car. While I was getting the ball, he went into the house, asked everyone whose car it was, and claimed that I threw the ball, causing the damage. I would confront him today for that. Story 107. The person I believed was my friend uploaded a video on his YouTube channel where my bully was mocking me while several people were laughing. Story 108. My ex and my mom passed away a week after they moved out of the country. While it would have been inconvenient for them to return for the funeral, they were wealthy and could have easily afforded plane tickets to be with me during the lowest point of my life. They didn't, and then ended up cheating on me with a mutual acquaintance 2 months later. Story 109. I never forgive a person who gave me illegal substances. I hope he will face severe consequences. Story 110. I had surgery with general anesthesia, and just when we exited the operating room, she screamed at me, saying, "It's done," while I was still asleep. I almost had a panic attack. After that, whenever I had other surgeries, I always made sure to ask the nurse not to scream at me when the surgery was done. Story 111. I will never forgive my grandmother. She called the police on me for things I never did, and now I have charges on my record that I can never erase. It makes it extremely hard to get a job. I have 3 felonies on my record because of her, and I will also never forgive the government. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.